How to rebuild yourself after narcissistic abuse, the real recovery. In 2019, researchers at the University of Toronto published findings from a 3-year longitudinal study that tracked 847 survivors of psychologically abusive relationships. They measured everything: cortisol levels, attachment security scores, self-concept coherence, relationship satisfaction in subsequent partnerships, quality of life indicators across physical health, career performance, and social connection. At the 18-month mark, the majority of participants showed minimal, meaningful improvement across most measures. At 36 months, something shifted dramatically. Those who had engaged in what the researchers called active identity reconstruction showed outcomes so significantly different from those who had not that the research team initially questioned the data. They were not questioning it because the results were bad. They were questioning it because the results were so consistently and measurably good that they seemed almost too clear for a psychological study. The survivors who had done the specific work of rebuilding, not just surviving the relationship, not just going no contact, not just understanding what had happened to them, but actively reconstructing who they were in the aftermath, showed neurological stress markers comparable to people who had never experienced the abuse at all. Their attachment security scores had normalized. Their self-concept coherence, the measure of how clearly and consistently a person knows who they are, had not just recovered. In many cases, it had exceeded their pre-relationship baseline. They were not back to who they were before. They were more than they were before. That study is the foundation of everything we are going to cover today, because it tells us something that most narcissistic abuse recovery content never says clearly enough. Recovery is not just possible, it is documented, it is measurable, it follows specific patterns, and the people who achieve it most completely are the ones who understand exactly what they are rebuilding and exactly how to rebuild it. This is part 10 of the Narcissist series, and if you have been with me since part 1, if you have sat through the understanding of what narcissism is, what it does, how it changes your brain, and how to finally create distance from it, this is the video you have been building toward. This is where we talk about what comes after. Subscribe right now if you have not already, because what we are building in this series is a complete psychological framework, and you do not want to miss where this goes next. Drop this in the comments. I am not just surviving, I am rebuilding. Point 1. The research says recovery is not linear, and that is the most important thing to understand first. In 2021, Dr. Judith Herman, one of the most cited trauma researchers in the world and author of the landmark book Trauma and Recovery, updated her framework based on 30 years of additional research since the original publication. Her updated finding on recovery timeline was direct. Trauma recovery, she wrote, does not follow a predictable linear progression. It follows what she called a spiral pattern, where survivors revisit the same themes and the same pain points repeatedly, but from a progressively higher vantage point each time. The same trigger that devastated them at month 3 produces a different response at month 12, not because the trigger changed, because they changed. This matters enormously for where you are right now, because one of the most damaging things that happens to people in recovery from narcissistic abuse, beyond the original damage of the relationship itself, is the secondary shame that comes from feeling like they are not healing in a straight line. They have a good week, they feel like themselves, they start to believe they are through the worst of it, and then something happens, a song, a smell, an interaction that rhymes with something from the past, and suddenly they are back in the middle of it with an intensity that feels like regression. It is not regression, it is the spiral. It is the same pain point being revisited from a higher vantage point. And the evidence that it is a higher vantage point is subtle but measurable. The recovery time is shorter, the intensity is slightly less consuming, the ability to observe the experience rather than just being inside it is fractionally greater. A 2020 study from the Journal of Traumatic Stress measured exactly this phenomenon in narcissistic abuse survivors over a 2-year period. They found that while the frequency of trauma-related emotional responses did not decrease significantly in the first 6 months, the duration of each response shortened by an average of 42% over the full study period. The waves were not getting less frequent, they were getting shorter. And shorter waves experienced repeatedly over time produced the measurable neurological recalibration that the Toronto study documented. This means something very specific for how you approach your recovery. You do not measure progress by whether the hard moments still happen. You measure it by how long they last when they do. That shift in measurement, from frequency to duration, changes everything about how you experience your own healing. Real talk. The case studies in today's video are going to show you exactly what this looks like in real people's actual lives. Not the cleaned-up version, the honest version. The version that includes the setbacks and the spiral moments and the days when it felt like nothing was working. And then what happened after those days. If this is landing, if this framing of recovery is giving you something more accurate to work with than what you have been carrying, hit that like button right now, because more people need to hear this than are currently hearing it. Point 2. The research on what actually moves the needle first. In 2018, a clinical team at Massachusetts General Hospital published findings from a 5-year study on treatment outcomes for survivors of narcissistic and coercive relationship abuse. They tested 4 distinct intervention approaches: cognitive behavioral therapy alone, somatic therapy alone, peer support groups alone, and what they called integrated recovery, a combination of all 3 delivered in a specific sequence. The results were not subtle. Participants in the cognitive behavioral therapy only group showed significant improvement in intellectual understanding of their experience. They could articulate what had happened to them with clarity and precision. They could identify the patterns, name the tactics, explain the neurological mechanisms. They understood their experience better than any other group, but their neurological stress markers, their cortisol levels, their amygdala reactivity, their attachment security scores showed the least improvement of all 4 groups at the 12-month mark. Understanding, the researchers concluded, is necessary but not sufficient for neurological recovery from relational trauma. The somatic therapy-only group, the group working directly with the body through practices like EMDR, somatic experiencing, and trauma-sensitive yoga, showed significantly better neurological marker improvement than the cognitive group. Their bodies were calming down even when their intellectual understanding was less complete. The peer support-only group showed the most rapid improvement in self-concept coherence, the measure of how clearly someone knows who they are, but the least improvement in individual neurological regulation. And the integrated group, the one that combined all 3 approaches in sequence, showed outcomes that were not just better than the others, they were dramatically, measurably, statistically significantly better across every single measure the researchers tracked. Here is what the sequence looked like in the integrated approach. First, somatic work to begin regulating the nervous system, because a dysregulated nervous system cannot effectively engage with cognitive processing or peer connection. You cannot think your way through trauma from inside an activated threat response. The body has to come down first. Second, peer support to rebuild the sense of self through witness and validation, because the default mode network, the neural architecture of self-knowledge, rebuilds most effectively through being seen accurately by other people, not just therapists, other survivors who have been through the same specific experience and can reflect back a reality that is not distorted by the narcissistic narrative. Third, cognitive processing to integrate the experience into a coherent narrative, not to understand it in isolation. The cognitive group did that, and it was the least effective approach, but to integrate it into a story of self that makes sense and has meaning, that turns what happened to you from something that happened to you into something that is part of who you are and where you are going. The specific sequence matters: body first, connection second, meaning third. I am following the sequence that actually works. Point 3. The case study that changed how researchers understood identity rebuilding. In 2022, researchers at the University of British Columbia published a case study series that has since become one of the most cited papers in narcissistic abuse recovery research. They tracked 12 survivors through a 2-year intensive recovery process and documented not just their outcomes, but the specific moments of transformation, the precise turning points where something measurably shifted in their self-concept, their neurological regulation, and their capacity for genuine connection. What they found overturned one of the most widely held assumptions in trauma recovery. They had expected to find that identity rebuilding happened gradually and smoothly, a slow accumulation of small improvements over time. What they actually found was that identity rebuilding happened in discrete moments, specific, identifiable, often seemingly small moments where something clicked into place, and that these moments clustered around a consistent set of circumstances. The first type of moment was what the researchers called acts of self-authoring, moments where a survivor made a choice, sometimes a very small choice, based entirely on their own genuine preference, without consulting what someone else wanted or calculating how it would be received. Choosing what to eat, choosing to leave a conversation that felt wrong, choosing to say no to something without apologizing for the no. Each of these moments, however small, fired the default mode network, added a small deposit to the account of self-knowledge, and over time, with enough of these moments accumulated, something reached a tipping point. The participants described it differently. One said she felt like she landed back in her own body. Another said it was like a frequency that had been slightly off for years, suddenly tuned to the right station. Another said she just felt like herself and could not explain when that started happening. The second type of moment was what the researchers called relational witnessing, being seen accurately, without distortion, without agenda, without the narcissistic filter, by another human being who genuinely knew them, not being agreed with, not being validated in the generic therapy sense, being actually seen, being known, having another person reflect back a reality about who they were that matched their own deepest sense of themselves. Many participants reported that a single moment of this kind of genuine witnessing was more impactful than months of individual cognitive processing. The third type of moment was what the researchers called narrative ownership, the moment a survivor stopped describing their story as something that happened to them and started describing it as part of a larger story that included who they were becoming. The shift from "this is what was done to me" to "this is part of what made me who I am now." That shift, when it was genuine and not performed, correlated with the most dramatic improvements in every outcome measure the researchers tracked. Drop this in the comments. I am the author of my story, not just a character in someone else's.